What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. And I'm super excited. I'm super excited to have Steve Livingway from Reaching Higher in the studio after, finagling with the cameras and getting everything set up this afternoon. I got a chance. Andrew Black, surprise, surprise, connected us through an email, and I love how that guy's always connected me to difference makers, and it's really cool. And this is how the reticular activation system works: is you get connected to somebody that's making a difference out there. I'm sitting down with a couple of my clients in a session. Shout out to Cody Powers, Caps Artistry, who's been on the show, and he said, "Oh, I don't even know how it was brought up." He's like, "I met up with one of my former principals, and he was talking about, he said Steve's name, and I'm like, oh my God, wait a minute, what'd you say?" And I was like, had to backtrack a little bit. It's like, wow, it's so cool how that happens, because I had not heard of Steve or Reaching Higher or anything that he had done. And so to have that second person, and then we meet up at the coffee shop a couple weeks ago at Captain's downtown in Brighton. And as we're meeting there, Karen Story comes in and is like, oh my God, Steve. And it's like, again, when you're talking about difference makers, she's like, oh my God, I wouldn't have met my husband if you didn't hire me. And it's just cool how you see people that you know and how things and people are connected. But for most of you that have listened to my podcast and my story, both as, from my childhood to now and how I'm impacting and working with people, I'm super excited to get Steve talking about Reaching Higher and his purpose, his mission, because this is the stuff teaching kids how to really grow that self-confidence, really making an impact and a difference in their lives. And wow, as I was sitting and talking, it's like, if Steve or this program would have reached me as a kid, I can only imagine the impact it would have had on me. And so I'm super excited to have Steve. And I promised I wouldn't put him on a pedestal, but he is on a platform. We're having him on a platform here to get more people knowing about Reaching Higher and hopefully making more impact for kids around the country. So Steve, welcome to Coffee and Grit.
Thank you for having me, and thank you. I feel flattered for being called a difference maker.
Well, it's the impact that you're making, and sometimes we don't know it, sometimes we do. I'm sure you've been told from people throughout your life, being in education, and you've been told by people that you've made a difference in their lives before.
Yeah, I was a principal for 20 years, a teacher before that. That's why I got into doing that. I wanted to make a difference, but hearing it, it really fills my bucket.
Well, and it's really cool because we were sitting and talking at the coffee shop the other day, and you're talking about how you run into former students and people say you might not remember me, and then you do.
I made it my mission as a principal to make connections. That's probably why I ended up doing what I do now with Reaching Higher, which we'll get into. But I didn't want to be a principal that sat in my office and didn't know my students. And I think you and I talked about this, but as things were going on in the world and you were hearing about things like school shootings, I became even more sure that making connections was the answer. I mean, we needed to reach out to each other, and kids needed to know that there were adults that cared about them.
I think it's kids are so great, but you look at anybody throughout life, and it's the people that come into your life that can come in and make a difference when it's the simple thing as just remembering you or believing in you.
Everybody craves this. And then I found during COVID, we lost so much of that. Kids are craving it now more than ever, and adults, like you said. They need this connection. They need to know someone knows them, cares about them. And that's where I think the power is, and that's in the power of what we do in Reaching Higher as well.
So tell me a little bit about Reaching Higher.
Okay, so we've been around for 28 years. I want to give a shout out. Our founder is Susie Dahlman. She's here in Brighton, and she was a school teacher, second grade. She had some life-changing events, some obstacles. Through that journey, she became a Dale Carnegie instructor to build her own confidence back up as a teacher and as a person. That led her to realize that this is needed for kids, building confidence, knowing you have value. In Reaching Higher, we call it discovering the leader within. I actually think of it as rediscovering the leader within, because when we're little kids, I remember feeling like I could do anything. I could jump off the roof and fly, not recommending that. Put a towel on and you can fly. You're a superhero. You didn't think about limitations. You didn't think about comparisons. You didn't think about how much money you had, or, none of that came into play. So in Reaching Higher, we are teaching kids to rediscover they have the power within them already to do anything they want in their lives. And some of the kids I work with, they know that. They've been achieving. They have a lot of support. But a lot of kids I work with don't know that. They feel that they're less than. They're not as good. They're not good enough. Some of them even feel like they're not good enough to be loved or be cared about by anyone. And so to rediscover this idea that within you is this power to have the life that you want, to do anything that you want, if you're willing, if you put your mind to it, if you're willing to work hard, it's not just going to happen. But that's really our message in Reaching Higher. So we were created 28 years ago by Susie. Then it became the mission. How do we get into schools? How do we work with kids? So it's in school. Sometimes it's in a church setting. Sometimes it's, we did a one that was through the court system. Anything, any organization that has youth, we want to partner with you, and we want to bring this program to more and more kids. So right now we're in about 18 different schools this semester, pretty heavily here in Livingston County, but beyond, bringing this message. And, we can go into this later, but there's activities and things to bring out this whole mindset shift. If you're at a state in your life where you've given up and you think, I can't do math, I can't get better at basketball, I can't improve my relationship with my dad, we're here in this program to tell you, yeah, you can do something about it. If you decide to, if you want to, and we're going to show you some tools and give you some examples, but you can do this. Whatever it is, whatever you're facing, you can do it.
It's extremely empowering, which, and we're going to get more into it, but like giving kids the tools to be able to show them they can take control of their mindset, that they do have value, that they can go create is just so, again, empowering is such a huge word, it's life-changing.
The biggest thing that happens in the class, it's not even the tools and strategies that we teach. It's bringing in an adult. So we have 5 mentors usually in a class and 1 or 2 instructors. So you bring in someone that the students know or see as successful, and then they share. Here's a belief that I had to overcome. Here's an obstacle that I had that I have to overcome, or that I'm working on it now. That's where you see, because it's not lecturing to the kids or preaching to them or, telling them you're showing an example. So an adult comes in willing to be vulnerable, which is hard for some.
Yep.
So you got to be willing to be vulnerable and say, we all go through this stuff. Here's what I've been dealing with, or here's what I was dealing with at your age. Then you see the kids, their hearts open up. Whatever wall could be up, depending on the age. We go from 5th grade through high school and then even adults. But depending on the age, the wall can be pretty high up and pretty thick. So you build this trust by being vulnerable and saying, here's a super success, here's your principal, here's your teacher, here's a coach, here's a business owner that you see as very successful. Well, it didn't just happen. Here's what they had to overcome. Here's how they dealt with this obstacle, and they still move forward, and if we can do it, you can do it. I have found that this is why I did this as a principal at my school in Heartland. This is why I fell in love with this. It works. It works because the adults come in and they're vulnerable.
when you can see somebody else and you think that they're so strong or they're this incredible, amazing person, and then you can find out that they have the same thoughts and struggles that you do. Again, that's life changing in itself. And then this podcast, that's really been a huge mission in that. I remember when I started my business, my neighbor came over and she was asking me questions about the business and stuff like that. And then she shared with me that she had once owned a business. She owned a bakery, and she was talking about how amazing this bakery was and how, how much she enjoyed getting up early in the morning, how much she enjoyed the drive into work, how much she loved her team, how much she loved baking good food, and then seeing people's faces as they're enjoying the food that she makes. And I'm getting like the tingles of like the love and joy that she has around it.
Getting hungry.
I'm getting hungry. And then she was like, but we couldn't make money and you couldn't pay me to start a business again. And I'm like, well, what if they paid you in the first place? And as I'm out and I'm having conversations with different entrepreneurs that were in that same spot that she was in, they went through those same struggles, but somehow they figured out how to persevere and make it on that other side. And to have those people that you see as the overnight successes, or they're the people that, people think that, oh, I could never be them. Well, guess what? They started off in the same exact shoes you were. And then you get to hear their story from when they were struggling, when they were in the parking lot and crying because they couldn't make payroll for their team. And, and wow, you can look at somebody like that. They were in your shoes and look at, they figured it out. You could too.
One of the things we show in our class when we're working on setting goals, successful people fail over and over again. So we show them all these examples. Michael Jordan, he was cut from his high school basketball team. J.K. Rowling, denied by every publisher there was. There's Einstein, Beethoven, you go on and on. Anyone you've ever run into that has a success story, they have failed over and over. It's in your podcast, Grit.
Yep.
So what we learn in the class together is, it's not about not failing, it's about not giving up. And so grit, persistence, whatever name you want to, I like grit.
I like it.
You're tough. You're not going to give up too easy if it's important to you. And then we show them, you realize that in things in your life that you really care about, or maybe you have a little talent at. So maybe you have grit when it comes to basketball or hockey, or you love to play music, but maybe not so much grit when it comes to math or your relationship with your dad, or whatever goal you want to name. And so what we show is, or what we talk about is, when you love something and you're willing to work hard at it, that's grit. You can do that in all the areas in your life. It's not just one thing. It's not just basketball that you love. If you can do that in math or your relationships or running a business, if you can bring that same mindset to it, you can accomplish whatever you want to do.
It's one of those things, and I kind of ramble saying it empowering, but I put myself as that kid because I was the kid that in 7th grade I tried out for basketball. I got cut, and I never tried out for basketball ever again,
right.
Like throughout high school or anything. And I loved it. I loved playing, but I just felt like I created a bunch of stories. I created it like, oh, well, it's a popularity game. Oh, it's, it's not fair or I'm not good enough. It was all the things. And it stopped me from going and doing something that I love to do. And now fast forward, I'm 46 years old. I'm playing basketball at a high level. I literally over the weekend, I'm scrolling on Facebook and a guy that I have to guard and sometimes I shut down just got signed by the Motor City Cruise, the G League team. Like he comes and plays us on the, in his off season in college and stuff. And like, wow, like he's literally like warming up with Jaden Ivey and Tobias Harris this weekend, like that's really cool. But man, like my limiting beliefs when I was that age prevented me from doing that. And then luckily, I'm grateful. And sometime in my mid-20s, I started to wake up. I started to like have this revelation myself and kind of have some of these like conversations and then seek out a lot of like Dale Carnegie. My first impactful book was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that changed my life.
You're right on with what you said about limiting beliefs. And most of us, to have a happy, successful life, we maybe learn these things in our 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm still learning things I'm 60 now. So in my 60s, and what we're trying to do is bring this to a 5th grader, a 7th grader, a 9th grader and say, If you can learn some of these ideas now, because a limiting belief, it stops us from even trying anymore.
Yep.
And something you really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
that's our message in there. A limiting belief says, I can't do it. I'm not good enough. He's better than me. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too short. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny, whatever it is. And they're always lies, right? They don't really prevent you. Like that Michael Jordan story. He came back and tried out again. And in the meantime, he got better and better and maybe grew, whatever, but then he made it, of course. But your story is so similar to almost all of us.
Yep.
We hit that hurdle. Oh, math. Oh, I didn't make it into advanced math. I guess I'm dumb in math. Or I got an E on this test. I guess I'm dumb. They even did some research. This is back to my education. You could predict how hard a student was going to work in a class by their first quiz grade. If that first quiz grade, so if you gave a real tough one and everyone failed it, they were going to have this mindset, oh man, I guess I'm really bad at math. I can't do it. And that determined how hard they were going to try. That first taste of, I guess I'll call it failure.
Yep.
Right? And then some would give up. And I would work with my teachers on, that can't be the way we're doing education, because that will just shut down too many students, right? Don't give your first test insanely hard and everyone's going to fail it. And then now what are you going to have? So I'm going all over the place, but that limiting belief is such a dream killer, from what you want in your life. And if you can figure that out at an earlier age, number one, they're almost always lies. There hardly ever any truth in them. No one told you couldn't try out again or that you were, right?
No.
At that time.
Only me. I was the only one.
Right. And it kind of goes into the comparison thing of, I'll tell kids, you're comparing yourself to the guy trying out for the basketball team who's a foot taller, who's been playing since age 3 and got the private coaching. If you want to compare yourself to you. Are you better than you were last week, last year, last month?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Keep going. So we agree on that one. And your example is just one I usually give in class. But I'll tell them this is about rediscovering the leader within. When you were learning to walk, you didn't fall down and say, man, I guess I suck at walking. I'll just crawl. I'm going to crawl the rest of my life.
No, you just kept, and it didn't matter how much it hurt when you fell. You kept getting back up.
Same with riding your bike. I don't know where this happens. I think it's maybe partly human nature, partly at school, unfortunately, partly just comparing yourself to your friends. Then you start learning this thing, well, I guess I can't do it. I'll give up. But I don't think that's innate in you, because all the examples I've given when we're little kids, that doesn't even occur to us.
It always makes me think of my son. Like, he would dance wherever. Like, growing up, like a little kid, like he'd bust out. There's music. He's dancing in public. Doesn't matter who's watching. And then he goes to do the 10 through 17 ages where it's like, I can't be caught dancing in public. Oh my God, what would people think? And then the boys, like freshmen through like sophomore, are like, oh, we don't care what people think, but we're too cool to, he's like making these observations. He's like, it's so funny that we say we don't care what people think, but like we're pretty much ruled by what people think.
The reason I'm chuckling is I think you hit on one of my biggest limiting beliefs, and it's about dancing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a great example. So I guess what you're mentioning in there too, we start getting judged by others.
Yes, judged. That's when it changes.
And I think that happens in school, and partly we judge ourselves. We're like, you're making that judgment. Oh, I guess I'm not good enough. I don't know if I don't think anyone said that to you about basketball. So part of it is our own judgments, right? I'm not as good as him. I'm not as smart as she is. I can't do my math as fast as Jimmy's doing it. So part of it is just us, but these judgments come in, and that's what feeds these limiting beliefs. I also think one of our sessions is on fear. It feeds that fear. They're connected, and then they grow. And then our mindset changes from I can do anything, it's a growth mindset
Yep.
to this fixed mindset of, well, I'm good at certain things, but there's so many things I can't do anymore. And it's because of this comparison and this judgment.
And then you just stop.
Most of the time you just give up, or you don't even try something new anymore.
I mean, as we're talking about this, it's like this cycle of like we're because I've seen this where it's like we're trying to get back to where we were when we were like 4 or 3, and it's this process. And you see people, maybe as they get older, they stop caring what people think or they say they do, and they start living a little bit looser. And then some people don't drop that at all. They have that fear going right up into death. And that was a big eye opener for me, watching my grandma, who cared so much what people thought. And then she died. And, you say people's biggest fear is public speaking.
Right.
You could die, like that could be worse. Like you'll never, wouldn't that be worse?
Yeah. And, I never thought about it this way when you said we're trying to get back to how we were when we were 4. One of our lessons is on loving and giving. It's our last lesson. I never really explained all this, but we meet in the school over 8 weeks, usually a couple hours a week. Each week there's a lesson that we build on. But one of the themes is happiness through loving and giving. And I believe that's just a natural human instinct, because when I'm in class, I'll say, take a look at a 2-3-year-old. Do you see a lot of hate coming there? You're a different skin color. You don't have as much money. I'm smarter. You don't really ever, that's just not a thing. And so I really do believe that's our innate human nature, is to be loving and giving. And we're teaching that in the class as one of the lessons, giving compliments. We call this a leadership class, personal leadership. And by the end, we're talking about, okay, now you've worked on your limiting beliefs. You've gone to war on your fear. You've been setting goals. Now, your job is to help lift up others. That's the happiness through loving and giving. One of the quotes I use is, one of the most selfish things you can do is to help someone else. Because you now are, I think you're that type of person.
I call it empowering the empowerers. Yeah, I get fuel from going and lighting other people on fire.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because we need more people like you. That's how I feel. I get a lot of, I get fulfillment. I have a sense of purpose when I'm in this class helping others, usually kids, just do better, feel better. I mean, I get a lot out of that. So going back to 4, that might be my new tagline. We'd be better off if we were like 4.
Yeah. Well, because again, could you imagine if you had that no fear of doing the somersault, no fear of going and talking to the person, no fear of dancing, no fear of that, like what other people are going to say or criticize you over? Because up to that point, your parents are telling you in most homes that you can do anything. You can go do anything. I literally walked around, you mentioned the towel. I walked around as a kid with like a towel pinned to my back, a pair of sweatpants, and my underwear over my sweatpants, right? That was me as a child going out in public, not thinking in the world what anybody would say about me. And then by the time I was in the 1st grade, I was so scared of my shadow. I was so scared of other people that I would not go out in the playground at recess, because there was this kid that like had 2 fingers and he looked funny, and somebody told me that if he touched me that I would look like him. And I literally made myself sick to my stomach every single day. I tried not to go to school every single day. I wouldn't go outside for recess. I'd make myself sick to my stomach, to the point where like my teacher in my 1st grade class, I remember talking to the whole class like about me, like about how this is not, that like trying to overcome my fear. And it was a big deal. I got my tonsils removed in the 1st grade because they thought there was something wrong with me, and it was just my mind. I was afraid.
I mean, this happens all the time, right? I mean, it's it's in your mind, but it's a real fear of being judged. It really can cripple somebody from having the life that they want. And I saw it all the time as a principal. I mean, there were kids that to get them to walk through that front door was an achievement to build on, to get them to go to one class for 5 minutes. because this fear, I was thinking when you mentioned about going to school, the fear of something stupid like my tennis shoes aren't the right brand, or I don't have the right jeans, or the shirt that everybody's buying. I mean, stupid things, but to kids, it could be so huge.
Yep.
And they start to feel that their value is determined by their circumstances.
Yep.
The money, the right clothes. Are they doing the sport? Do they have the hairstyle? Are their grades? Depending, what school you're at and what level. All these things that say nothing about your value as a person. Absolutely nothing. Right? Why would you judge somebody? If I was going to judge value of a person, I might look at kindness, giving,
Yeah.
I'm definitely not looking at their shoes or what their grades are, but we do that to each other. And, I was a good principal, I believe, and I had a lot of good teachers, but we kind of do that in school in a way, Here are your grades, you're going here. Here are your grades, you're going, you made the team, you didn't. I mean, it's his life, but we need to be, as part of school, I believe, and this is where Reaching Higher can come in, teach this other stuff, that this doesn't determine your value, right?
Yes.
Your value is not changed by what happens to you in your life or your circumstances, especially the ones you can't control.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because it's not, I think a lot of times we try to make it so soft, and we try to remove all the obstacles and the hurt feelings. And when you do that, you don't have a chance to really grow that inner strength, to grow that grit. I've had people ask me, how do you get grit? Well, you get knocked on your butt and you get back up. And there's no way to circumvent that. You can't remove the comparison and the things and the hard work it takes to get to goals and the failure over and over again. You can't replace that in any way. And as we go and we try to make it softer, it sets people up for failure as they get older, because they're going to hit adversity one way or the other. However, what we're really missing, to your point, is teaching this other aspect, because we're not teaching that other aspect, that all this stuff is going to exist. What can I do within it, and how do I own my power?
You are 100% right. When we're in Reaching Higher, we're not changing your circumstance. We're not counseling. We're not changing what we're saying is everyone goes through these things. And by the way, it's not just the adults that are leading through vulnerability. If you have 25 students, we make sure it's a cross section. So let's say you got a ninth grader, you got a senior who's the valedictorian, you've got a 10th grader that's kind of quiet. And I mean, they're all realizing we all deal with the same stuff. This is normal. It's part of life to have a failure. I mean, everyone does. It's part of life to have hard things happen to you. And what we're teaching in here is what you said. You always have a choice on how you're going to respond to everything. It may not feel like it, but there's always a choice. You don't have a choice on this happening. Something's happened to you that's really hard or unfair or whatever. You still have a choice. How am I going to respond? Is this going to stop me? Or am I going to work twice as hard? Am I going to make sure everyone knows, yeah, I got this, right? That's the message. And so when you build these, it's about building these connections to show the truth. Everyone has these things. They're different, but at the core, it's all these same things that almost every person goes through in their life, to normalize the fact that that doesn't mean your value is less or that you can't do it. One of our lessons is on managing stress. And right at the beginning, we tell them, you're not going to get away from it. This isn't about eliminating stress. Positive strategies to manage your stress. That's what leaders do. That's what successful people, they don't eliminate stress. Good things cause stress, coming to a podcast,
Yeah.
starting a new business, getting married, moving. They can be great things, but they can cause stress. So how do we positively manage these things so that it's not stopping us from what we want or preventing us from even trying anymore? So that is the message. You're 100% right. when I first started in I know I'm rambling, but when we
You're
first
good.
started in education, we used to talk about helicopter parents. And I'm not bashing parents, and I've been made the same mistakes myself, but a helicopter parent would come in and take the kid out of the problem. Later on, we started talking about snowplow parents out of good intentions. They would make sure that they didn't even have a problem to come in their path, clear the problem before they even had it,
Yeah.
not saving him from it. Oh, I heard that teacher's hard. I'm going to call in and make sure they have a different teacher. Right.
Yep.
And so you're right. I mean, this is not kids' fault either. You got to face some of these hard things. And even in education, we've said, if you're having a problem, go tell an adult, go to the teacher. And so I think unintentionally we're telling kids, you can't solve this problem.
Absolutely.
You can't figure it out.
Yep.
You need a parent or an adult to figure out, or a teacher, everything. And that's not true, and that's not healthy. And I think maybe we're coming back in education to say, no, there's a lot of things that you can handle yourself, and you don't need everyone else to come in and figure it out for you.
It's so huge, and I get it. I've been there as a parent where you want to remove that pain. Oh man, the first time my son got cut from the basketball team, it was like, I wanted to remove all that. However, he needed to go through that. And then, he needed to go through that in order to work and put the time and the effort in order to figure out if he wants to do it again, and we went through a process because for me, it was like, oh, I just quit. For me, it was like, do you like doing this? Do you want to continue doing this? Like asking him those questions. Now, what do you want to do? What do you have to do in order to close that gap? And putting a game plan together. And then he went out and he did the things, and when he has a problem, we ask him, how are you going to solve it? How are you going to put it together? And it's so hard because I see the answer and I want to just remove it. But it's like having that patience of sitting back and giving him the belief and knowing that he can do it and he can solve it. We're there if you need us, but let's see what you do. And we're kind of now, like he's in his senior year, and we joke we're kind of like, empty nesters. He's very independent and he solves his own problems.
You know what? One of my colleagues in Reaching Higher, he was a head coach, basketball coach in South Lyon for a long time, varsity coach. And I look at this, just what you said as a parent, is kind of like a coaching role, asking the right questions, support. You've got some wisdom you can share, but he's the one in there he's playing, he's the player. It's on him, right?
Yep.
How hard you're going to work, how much you're going to practice, what's your plan, what are you going to do? That's kind of our mindset for the class. Our mentors and the instructors are coaching students through these questions, sharing their wisdom, but not, we're not giving them we can't tell them what their goal is. We can't tell them what their limiting belief is, right? They have to kind of dig deep and to figure out what is important to me, what do I want to do, how am I going to approach this? And we're there to coach them through. And it's just, kudos to you, by the way.
Thanks.
I think that, to me, that is good parenting. And like I said, I can admit I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm old now, at 60, I can say that, my generation maybe took away too many obstacles and issues and tried to solve everything for our kids, generalization. But then where's the grit? Where's there's an epidemic of anxiety, depression, withdrawal. Some of it maybe is society or COVID or the way schools are set up, or I'm not sure, social media. But part of it might be that we've kind of taken away or tried to clear away too many obstacles and hard things that our kids need to. A long time ago, I read this research about little babies and the stages they go through. They have to push themselves up.
Yeah.
To develop. You can't do that.
You can't do it for them.
If you do, they're not going to develop correctly. They have to do it. They have to do all these things, And I think it's the same for a 12-year-old. There's certain things. Doesn't mean we can't be empathetic and try to help through these things, but to clear away every hard thing from them probably isn't the way to do it.
Well, and then so this moment I was proud of him. He calls me up. I'm in the gym in the morning, and he just went to. It was during the summer, so he was just on his way to work. And so I get this call. I answer. He's like, "Dad, I was in a car accident." I'm like, "Oh, is it Dad? Oh no, are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay. My car is not okay. The hood is kind of messed up." And I'm like, "Okay, so what are you doing?" "Well, I've already called up. I've got the police on the way. They're coming. I called up my boss. I let him know what's going on. He's going to let me borrow a work truck." And so I'm sat. One of my coworkers is picking me up. He's going to drive me to work. We'll get the car towed. He already had this plan. He was like, and then Nate's going to let me drive the truck. And then fast forward, he ended up buying the work truck from his boss. Like his boss was like, "Hey, you can buy this." And he ended up setting his own terms up and buying the truck. And so he has this payment plan that he's like got with the owner of the company that he worked for. And I didn't have to do, and I asked him questions when he got home. The one thing is he was like, the officer came and told him, "Yep, everything." He's like, "You want this towed?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay." So he was like, he's like, "You can go ahead and go to work." He was like, "I'll stay here and make sure your car gets loaded up and everything." So I get home. "So where'd your car get towed?" He was like, "Oh, this place." And I was like, "Okay, you need to call them." And he's like, "Oh no." He's like, "I'm pretty sure they did it for free. The police officer said everything was all set." And I'm like, "It's not free." Call up. So there's a couple things you have to ask questions, understand if they've got the whole complete picture, and help them where you can. But he figured out the rest of that by himself.
That's a pretty cool story.
I was super proud of him.
What's your son's name?
Jackson.
Yeah. Kudos, Jackson.
Shout out. No, but it's hard in all those things. You want to be able to jump in and intervene, but taking that breath and kind of letting him figure it out, I'm seeing him develop his own strength. He's developing his own muscles.
That's what we want to make visible in our classes. So when we're meeting over the 8 weeks, we want them to see the adults sharing this kind of thing, that you can do these things. They deserve support, encouragement, right? But you can do hard things. That's just like getting back to that 4-year-old, right?
Yep.
You can do these things.
Yeah, because the 4-year-old is determined. The 4-year-old's not even thinking that I don't want to do this, that I need someone else to help me.
Yeah, in fact, I think a lot of 4-year-olds get kind of mad when the parent wants to do it. No, I can do it.
I got it.
Let me handle this.
Yep. So how did you learn about the program? How did you get involved?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm kind of jumping all over. Well, I was a principal in Heartland at the middle school. And Susie, the founder, came and talked to me, asked me if I'd heard about Reaching Higher, which I had, if I wanted to do it. And I immediately said, no, I'm busy. I'm doing all these other things. I said it nicely. No. And she kept asking, and I said no a few more times. She says 3 times. But something, I'm not sure what it was. I mean, I connect with this. She said, "I think you should do that, and I think you should teach it. I think you'd be a good teacher for the program." And there aren't a lot of principals teaching it. They don't usually have the time. And I said yes. And I went through the training. I dragged along my counselor and eventually my assistant principal and a teacher. Drag's the wrong word. Kind of, encouraged, "Hey, would you give this a try?" And we went and got trained. And I started teaching it at my school. And I fell in love with teaching again, which is one thing. I'd been a principal and assistant principal. I fell in love with teaching again. And I made that a mission as a principal to have these connections with kids. But when I'm spending 16 hours over 8 weeks with a smaller group, 25, and by the way, in that group, another thing I loved about this, I had some high achieving kids. We call them proven leaders. Mm-hmm. We had some kids that were struggling. And in Reaching Higher, we call them potential leaders. And then we had a lot of kids in the middle. We call them emerging leaders. Those kids in the middle, I have to be ashamed. I didn't know them very well. They weren't in trouble. They weren't missing class. They weren't failing grades. They were doing okay. right? And those aren't the ones the principal usually gets to know. So I loved getting to know the average student there a little bit better that was a little under the radar. And I fell in love with it, and I saw that it was working. Like light bulbs were going off at the graduation. Students share the impact, and I just saw this mindset shift. I mean, I was in Heartland is a pretty Mayberry-ish, type community. I had students in there say, on day one, if you really knew me, you'd know I'm probably going to go to jail because my dad's in jail, and that's where I'm going to end up.
Mm.
Right. And
Yep.
so this mindset that they had already, and we're talking 7th and 8th grade, and to say in class, you know what? No, this is not, I'll tell kids, how old are you? 12? You got your first 12 chapters of your book written. You can't change them. You got 80, 90, maybe 100 more.
Yep.
Who gets to write them? You do. They're not determined. You get to author this. And it seems so common sense, but kids don't always think that way. They think everything's determined by age 12,
Yep.
that how their life's going to go.
It's a permanent record.
It's funny you say that.
I always remember that as a kid. It's going to go on your permanent record.
Yeah. Here's a little tidbit. I don't think anyone looks at your record from 7th grade. Forget I said that.
Forget I said that, kids.
But so I fell in love with the class, and then this may have spurred me to retire a little earlier than I had planned as being a principal because I wanted to get back and teach. And then I got into this role a little bit deeper by being the director of Reaching Higher for Youth. And I still teach a class at least once a semester, once over the summer. This feeds me. I mean, I just love it. And I gain, the adults in this class, they gain right along with the kids. I've taught this, I can't even, dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Every time I'm thinking about my new goal, or what I can improve on, or a relationship I need to work on, or what limiting beliefs are still cropping up for me that I need to remember to say, that's a lie, or what fear is holding me back from something I really want to do in my life. They don't just go away. They're not snapping your fingers.
Yep.
But what we're just showing, you can go to war with these things. Every time you face your fear, you're going to get stronger. The fear is going to subside. Every time a limiting belief pops up and you say, "Oh, that's not true. I've done harder things than that." They become habits. They become a little easier. You get a little stronger every time. And so I just fell in love with all of this. I think we say sometimes not everyone needs this, but everyone deserves this. Everyone deserves it. And I see kids, even the higher achieving kids, they feel like their value is only determined by how high they're achieving and how their sports are going and if they made it into the right college and if their grades are all A pluses. They are learning a lot from this as well to say, that's not what's determining my value. And by the way, if I'm at a point, now I have an obligation to help others. It's not only about me achieving at a certain level. That's part of the message as well.
Yeah, I heard this thing over the weekend, and I really, really liked it. And it's like talking, it kind of ties into all of this, even though it's a little bit out left. But it was like we're meant to please God and serve people, but oftentimes we get caught serving God and pleasing people. And I really like the thought process of that because it's like if we're thinking about serving people versus pleasing people, and like we're really when that fear and those limiting beliefs really come into that pleasing people. Oh, I can't say that. That's going to really make somebody feel uncomfortable or offend them or make them feel bad. I've heard people say they can't celebrate their accomplishments because it makes somebody feel bad that that didn't get that or didn't and it's like these things that we have that keep us small. That it all comes down to that pleasing of people.
It reminds me of one of our activities. It's really one of my favorites. We practice in giving and receiving genuine compliments. we shouldn't have to be teaching this, I suppose, but it's become so normal to, I don't know how you were with your friends when you were
Yeah,
a young boy.
yeah, yeah,
Insults, teasing,
yeah.
that's
It's the way we communicate.
that's
Yeah,
comfortable.
yeah,
It's very awkward feeling to look someone in the eye, give them a compliment, back it up by evidence.
yep.
If I were to say to you, Jason, really appreciate the way you are making connections in our community, highlighting the positive, giving a voice, to people out there trying to make a difference. And when we're done giving the compliment, we tell the student all they need to say are 2 words. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Not, oh, I don't deserve it,
Yep.
not me.
Yep.
I tell them it's like taking a present and throwing it in the garbage. But most of us do that.
Most of us do it.
And most of the kids I work with, believe it or not, they really have to work on just accepting a compliment. It's easier for them to give it than to actually accept it sometimes.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because you said you think most people need this. I think everybody needs this. And because you can look at the people that are the high achievers and say maybe they don't need it, but they have their own pressures.
They do need it.
They might need it even more than what you see some of the middle of the pack people, because I don't know. I don't think anyone needs it more than another. I think this is something that we should all be taught, period. And so you're looking at this like you're trying to get it out in like what, 5th grade, 8th grade, like really anywhere, but like getting it out to more schools. To me, this should be standard education.
Yeah. And when I first started in education, so that would have been in 88, old, we had a little more time for this thing. At least I did. I started out in alternative ed, but it used to be a little more time, a little more just to take things slower, get to know your students and spend time on some of these types of activities. But things have gotten pretty rigid. There's a big curriculum and standards and tests, and the stress level's up a little bit. And so we can go into a school and provide this, at least for a group of students. And those students are usually impacting 5 or 6 other students, plus their family. So by doing this, we're giving time to just be real and authentic. I mean, when you go to school, if someone asked you how you're doing, what would be, fine.
Fine.
You don't talk about what's going on at home, your limiting beliefs, your self-doubt. You probably don't talk about someone at school who's giving you a hard time, fine. So we're given a space just to talk like human beings. It's not even really teacher to student. It's more just like we're going to connect as human beings in this class and talk about all the things that everyone deals with. This isn't like a competition who's got the hardest life or the most obstacles. It's just real, whatever it is.
Yep.
It's just real. So maybe your biggest fear is, not getting into college or not having the career that you want, where someone else's biggest fear is, they're never going to be loved and they're never going to meet anyone and they don't feel good enough, So it just is wherever you're at, but it's a chance to be totally authentic and real and not have that fake image that says, I'm the jock, everything's fine, or whatever that image might be. Teachers have it. We all do, right? What are we going to present out to the world? This is making a safe spot just to be genuine about this stuff and coach through to get the goals that you want in your life. We're not changing anything or solving anything. At the very beginning, people used to kind of think of us as a counseling type program. It really isn't. We're not giving you advice on how to change this. It's all about making changes for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's up to you what you're going to do about it.
Man, I just had this, as you were talking, it's, that's what it is. Why this is so powerful for me, and why by the time you get done talking, I'm kind of like in awe, because as you're talking about from your end and you're working with the kids, I keep going in and thinking about all the adults that I'm working with that never had this intervention, that never had this program. And then I'm working with them when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, trying to unravel this that is now compounded over the course of a few decades in that internal thought. Most of the thoughts that we have are a collection of the negative things, the things that we're not, the things that we missed, the things that we didn't do, the things that we're not enough of. These are adults that are stuck in these thought patterns. And so why I get so excited about the program that you're doing is because you're reaching them here. And I can only imagine, and I don't know, and maybe we can go into this conversation, what that looks like for them, over the course of years. Have you seen how this has then played out to them in their adult stages?
Yes, I have. It's funny you asked that. A couple mentors that are in our class at Royal Oak High School, they went through the program. The instructor went through the program 28 years ago. And so we know that it has longevity. If you can get in and try to change that mindset and some of these habits of thought, habits of action, if you can change them earlier, I don't even like the word change. We're just opening up this possibility to those students, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It don't have to be this way. You have a choice. You don't have to think, oh, I'm suck at math, I can't do it. You have a choice to say, you know what, I can do this, and here's my plan, and I'm going to take action. So, so we've seen that. I just had a student reach out. I shouldn't call her a student. She took the class in Detroit at Remus Robinson High School or junior high, I can't remember now, 25 years ago. And it changed her life. She reached out to us. She came to the gala that we just had. She had a photo from her Reaching Higher class hanging on her wall, from the graduation for years, and she would tell her kids. But she said this is what kept her going, this mindset that I can, and she's had some challenges, it hasn't been super easy. So I think I lost track of your question.
Well, yeah. So, like, what happens? Like, as it was, like, I guess the stories of as they get older, as they progress, because I see all the adults that didn't have something like this come into their life. I see the progression in what happens, and there's a lot of being stuck in their head. There's a lot of shame or being afraid to be shamed.
Every graduation I go to, at least a couple adults will say, I wish we had this when I was in school, which would include me. I wish I had it when I was in school. It would have really helped me. So we actually have an adult program. It's called Reaching Higher for Pros. So we have adults that sign up for this. We have, companies that sign up for this to work with their people to overcome limiting beliefs, to move past fears, to set goals, just to do what leaders do, what successful people do. So we're shining a light on what do leaders do. But then everyone still, in our first class, we show there's an M on your hand. You see it in the wrinkles. Did I show that to you the other day?
Yep.
But if you flip it over, what is it?
It's a W.
You got to be willing. We can show you this stuff. You've got to be willing, to change that mindset, get out of your comfort zone, try something new, work hard. You got to be willing to do all these things. But I think it's powerful just to show the possibilities and make these connections, because I think some of the adults you work with and some of the kids I work with, they're definitely at a point where they don't think it's even possible anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the scary to me. If I'm working with a fifth grader or a high schooler or an adult, to have them think, there's nothing I can do about this anymore. I'm a loser. That's it. Nothing I can do. And they got 80 more years.
Yeah.
Or 50 more years or 10 more years to say this is not who I am.
Well, because your thoughts become things. And that was the thing that I thought about that was so sad when you were talking about the people that come in and are like, you don't know this about me, but I'm going to end up in jail. Because if there's no intervention, the odds that they will be in jail or will be in constant trouble are pretty high, because that's their thought that they're wrestling with constantly. And they're telling themselves, this is who I'm going to become. Guess what? Our minds are excellent servants, terrible masters. We're going to prove ourselves right. we're going to get those bad breaks and be with the wrong groups and, and just lead down this path and be like, see, that we fulfilled our self-fulfilled destiny.
One of our first lessons is this power of, we call it plant great seeds is the poem we do, but anything before it happens has to be a thought, correct? All right. I mean,
Yep.
And what thought are you planning? I'm going to make the shot. I'm going to miss the shot. I can do this. I can't do this. I'm worth it. I'm not worth it.
Yep.
I can do math. I can't do math. I'm going to ask this person out on a date or they're going to laugh at. It has to be a thought. And so one of our first lessons is if you're constantly planning these negative thoughts, I can't do it. I'm not good enough. They're going to laugh at me. I'm not worth it. I've heard worse ones, I'm a loser. One of the kids had shared, this was to Susie, she had a little note by her bed. Every morning she'd wake up and it said, I'm a loser. That was the first, she wrote it to herself. That was the first thing she saw every morning when she woke up. I'm a loser. By the end of the class, she replaced it with a note that said, I'm a miracle. I'm a miracle. So if you can, I've been there. I've been at times in my life where it was negative, 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 negative. And that's more likely to happen now. And I tell them, just because you have the positive thought doesn't make sure it's going to happen. But it's way more likely if you're thinking, man, I got this shot. I can do this.
Yep.
I've done hard things before. Harder than this. I can do this. I can pass this math class. If you're starting from that, mindset, way more likely to have a good outcome than if you're starting with, I can't do it. I failed over and over again and I'm a loser and there's nothing I can do about it. That's a dangerous mindset for anyone to be in.
It's dangerous. And they actually did do a study like this. I'm trying to rack my brain to think of where it was at and what it was called. But they had these three groups of basketball players that shot the same average 3-point, right? And so they did, the one group just shot free throws. The one group just thought about making free throws, not shooting free throws, but they just thought about and visualized making free throws. And then the other group visualized making free throws and then shot the free throws. And the group that just shot free throws was the lowest performing group. The second best group was the group that sat and visualized making the free throws. And the best group was the one that did both.
Yeah, I've heard this, and it's become part of what I know to be true now, which is if you can see it in your mind happening, then it's way more likely to happen. Mm-hmm. We call it visualization in our class too. You can also use that for relieving stress. You can use it for your goals, right? Can you visualize yourself? I'm thinking to the woman that owned the bakery. Can you visualize what this is going to be, what it's going to feel like, smell like?
Yeah.
Right? If you can do that, it's more likely you're going to get there. That research is amazing to me, but that's the power of the human mind, right?
Yep.
The power to do anything. Forgive. You can achieve anything in your mind, right? But then it's also got the power to cripple us, basically, right? And make us feel like we can't do anything.
Yep. Literally to where we don't leave the house. We can be crippled or, worse yet, we end our lives.
Yeah. That's one of our first lessons is we don't think anyone was meant to live a life of fear, to live a life in their basement, afraid, to do anything. We don't believe that's what people were meant for. Mm-hmm. Why does it keep happening over and over? And it is that power of your mind to say, I deserve better. I can do this. I have value. I'd say even more than building confidence, what we're building for a lot of people is this idea that I have value. I'm worth it. I'm worth however hard it is to get there. I'm worth, I am worth it. I have value. Even more than confidence, I think that's missing, from some of the kids that I see.
Well, and how do you get confidence? By taking action. you've got to do it over and over again. I love Kobe Bryant. You talked about Michael Jordan, but Kobe
Yeah.
Bryant has a book, The Mamba Mentality. And in the book, he talks about how he was never afraid to look foolish. Like he teaches this whole principle, it's a whole chapter talking about how never be afraid to look dumb in front of people because he was like, I'd go out and I'd try these basketball moves in games that I'd been practicing, but I look dumb. And some people would make fun of me or point fingers. He was like, it didn't really matter to me because I knew I was just new at it. And as I kept doing it and doing it and doing it, I'd get better. But I was never afraid to try to insert something in because and knowing that I was going to be a failure at it. I knew that it wasn't going to look good. I knew it wasn't going to work out, but I knew the long end. I knew the long game.
Yeah, that's something I actually say in class too is you got to suck at something before you can be good at it.
Yeah. Yep.
It's back to the crawling or walking and riding the bike, right? You've got to be able to, man, and I've had that fear a lot of my life of looking silly in front of others, right? I think that's where the fear of public speaking comes from.
Yeah.
It's not actually the fear of speaking. It's that someone's going to laugh at me. Someone's going to judge me. I'm going to look foolish. I didn't know, right?
I'm not going to say the smart thing.
Right. Or why you don't raise your hand in class. It's not, or you raise it kind of like this. I might know if I don't call on me. It's that fear that we're going to get laughed at, judged, put down, look different. Just looking different,
Yep.
not even silly. Just looking different, I think, is a fear that I see and that I still grapple with sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the thing. And I love how it's not you take this class and boom, no more hardship, no more problems, no life is easy. No, these are just, again, the way to deal with it because there's going to be challenges.
And we do tell them, this will help you the challenges you face are going to help you get stronger. Like the fear session, it's forget everything, run, or face everything and rise. Fear, two meanings, right? This isn't going to be easy. One of our other lessons is we take out a dollar bill and we crumble it up, step on it. I'm not supposed to, but rip a little piece off of it, rub it in the dirt, right? This is going to happen to you in your life. I mean, there's probably fortunate people that don't have much of that, but most people are going to go through loss, hardship, failure, rejection. These are part of life. And if you're not, then you're not even trying anything new. You're not even trying to do anything hard.
Yep.
I see that too.
Yep.
You see kids that won't take any risk, try anything hard, try the hard class, try out for the team, ask someone, if you want to be my friend, because it's safer to be in that little bubble and not try anything they feel like. But then, of course, you're missing out on all the great things in life.
5,000%. All the great things are outside of that comfort zone.
That's one of our lessons. Exactly. I want to give you a compliment. This has been the most conversational podcast I've ever had. And that's a big compliment. I love it.
Ah, that's awesome. I appreciate that.
It actually just feels like a genuine conversation, which is really cool.
I try to tell people it's going to be a genuine conversation, but it's it is, and that's, as you become self-aware and realize some of the gifts that you have. And that was for me, I was a sales director for a company before I started my business, and I interviewed so many people for jobs. And after just about every single interview, people would tell me, that was the best interview I've ever been on. I felt like I was just having coffee with a friend. And people would tell me things they would never tell anybody ever in an interview. They would open up and tell me about deep, dark secrets in their life. And I'm like, either that's good or bad, but they would tell me, they would open up, and I would have this. So it's the same thing here, we just kind of go at it.
And I'm relating to that as a principal. When I got better and later in my career at interviews, it was just like you said. We're not going to make this, try to throw the hardest questions at you.
Yeah.
We're going to just have a conversation.
Yep.
But I learned a lot more about them.
5,000%.
Than the canned answers you might get or
whatever
it was. It wasn't, because what I wanted was someone who was going to really love and connect with kids. Before I even wanted to know how much they knew about math.
Yes.
I mean, you need to know your math, but I wanted to know that. And I was it's interesting you say this because it's like what we do in the Reaching Higher class. Through vulnerability and building trust and just sharing, you get so much more. This isn't a canned program that just says, here's the 5 steps you need to take. It's making this connection with people and really getting to know each other and realize, because you can't just tell someone, oh, we all go through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could, but what you need to show is, I'm going to share and I'm going to be vulnerable. And so is the valedictorian. And so is the kid next to you and that you've never talked to, that you maybe judge, whatever. They're going to share.
Yep.
And now you start to learn that we all go through it. We all have the same wants. We all have the same types of things that can hold us back in life. I don't want to make this sound like it really is about leadership. And we have some really high achieving and even the kids that aren't achieving well in school, they've got so much. This is another thing I love about doing this. I want everyone out there in the world, politician, any adult, anyone who is judging kids, these kids are awesome. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with them. We're not fixing anything. It's just about reactivating what they used to know within them. Some of them still do, that they have so much more power. They're so much stronger than they might realize at the moment. So one of the things I'll say in class sometimes, you think of the hardest day you've ever had in your entire life. You've gotten through it. Here you are.
Yep.
Not only have you gotten through it, you signed up for this class, you're here, you're positive, you're giving. I mean,
yep.
That is something special, right? So, you can do this, is what they're finding out.
Well, and I love this, and we talked about this at the coffee shop a couple of days. We're talking about, and I know you guys are in more than Livingston County, but I know Livingston County specifically, you have a bigger presence in. So, not to say that there aren't. Again, everybody needs this, but then you look at like the Detroit schools or the Flint schools, where maybe you aren't getting a majority of parents that are telling their kids they can do anything, and some of the things that maybe you see here are really void in areas like that. And how much could this make an impact there?
I think the kids are the same everywhere I go. Their circumstances are different. And we have a class in Detroit. I remember one of the students sharing their fear. They actually had seen a relative get killed in front of them. That was their fear, that this was going to happen again to someone that they cared about or loved. So I don't usually hear that too much here in Livingston County, that type of thing. But so apart from the circumstances, the kids, I feel, are all the same. I mean, I really see no difference. And by the way, the kids today, I think, maybe are even more empathetic and more, I think they're craving this.
Yeah.
Maybe even more so than when I first started out. And they really, once we get them in this class and they start to see this as for real, the hood will come down, the eye contact. I really feel like everyone's craving this. So I do have a mission. I want to get into some of the schools. I don't know the right word. Maybe more struggling population, maybe more underserved community. I don't know the right word here to call this, but you said Flint, Detroit. I know that some of their kids maybe are going through even more than what I see here in Heartland, Brighton, Howell, Pinckney, Fowlerville, right? So I do want to reach out to these schools. So if you're hearing this podcast and you're working one of those schools, I want to meet with you, because everyone deserves this. And if you've the students that maybe have had more obstacles, they need to hear it even more.
Well, and it's so funny, because as I sat and I talked to you at the coffee shop, and I'm like, who would say no to this? Like, what kind of obstacles? Like, who would like this is everybody needs this, and you're like the hardest thing to do is to get in, and then to get a school to commit to doing it, and then I hear you say that was brought up to me 3 or 4 times, and I said no, and so to really understand why you would say no versus why it's worth it.
Why did I say no? And I have a lot of empathy. I don't want to criticize the school. If you're going to get an email or a phone call from this guy, hey, have you heard of Reaching Higher? Delete, and that was kind of my mode too when I
Yeah.
was a principal, because you're inundated. And most of them are like kind of canned programs or kind of one and done things. And a lot of them are probably good. We were doing a lot already to make connections with kids at my school. We redid our mission as a staff to dedicate ourselves to this. And so I guess maybe a little arrogance of thinking I'm already doing all these great things and I don't really have a lot of extra time or money or whatever, to try another thing on top of it. So I have empathy for anyone out there at a school, but the reason it's worth it is it works. I did assemblies and things and they were good. They didn't stick like this does, because one of our challenges is pulling kids out over 8 weeks, pulling them out of class, especially at high school. But what I found is the mix of students with the adults being vulnerable and enough time to start trying to change some of the mindsets and habits and actions, time to get out of your comfort zone, and then to come back and share in class, how did it go? Oh, you can't just do this in a 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not that easy. And, unfortunately, I wish it were easier, but it takes some time to build these connections and to really show by example and through leading through vulnerability that you can do this. You have a choice here. So it works. That's why I stuck with it. So I taught it at my school for quite 5-6 years before I retired. And that was my number one thought when I retired. I want to do this. I want to teach Reaching Higher classes. That was my goal when I retired.
Well, and it was cool how you said, you rediscovered your love for teaching again.
Yeah. Well, as a principal, when you get your master's degree in educational leadership, you have a vision, all these things I'm going to do. But part of the job is things that weren't, they were doing state reports and, yearly testing and scheduling, things that all had to happen, kind of like the management piece versus the educational leadership piece that really filled my bucket, was leading that in how are we going to connect with kids? How are kids going to get the best experience possible? How are we going to, same for my staff, if I can support my teachers, they can pour into their kids. But I got a little further and further away from teaching, especially with the students. I mean, my role was more to try to lead my teachers and faculty into some of the best practices and how are we going to look at this? How are we going to pour into our kids? And as I said, I'll pat myself on the back. I was a hands-on principal. I didn't sit in my office. I was out seeing the kids every day, but I wasn't really getting to know them at the level that I can in this class. Learn their name, say hi. And then some of the highest achieving kids I would know well. Some of the kids that were maybe in trouble a lot, unfortunately, they got to know me pretty well.
Yeah.
But I had a school of 950.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of kids I wasn't getting to know that well. And this kind of filled that need of, I was jealous of some of the teachers that really got to know their kids, what was working, what wasn't, and really built those relationships. I wanted to get back to that.
It's so cool. It's so cool that you got that opportunity in this way. Because again, this is, it's that ripple, it's the butterfly effect, that ripple effect. And I can only imagine how this is rippling, because you look at as individuals, how many people we touch. I think you'd said this goes back, like you're working with the kids, but how does that impact that family even as they go back, and as they're learning this, and are they then passing it on and teaching other people, And so, how many ripples are you making through this program? And you gotta feel it.
I get very happy when I'm at a graduation and the parent says, you know, Jenny was at home telling me I need to call it the power of the pause, stop and pop. Think before you're actually going to say something or send a text or make a decision, and they'll say, yeah, they've been telling me I need to do that at home. I was maybe while driving. I really do think it impacts that whole family. And the whole school, really. I mean, the whole culture can change. I was doing 3 cohorts a year at my school, which is way more. It's probably maybe even too much. So that was 75 kids a year. But if you're intentional about picking those students that are really going to have an impact for themselves personally, but also in their family and in the school, you can really start to make a difference in the whole culture of your school. And that wasn't the only thing I was doing. We still had our assemblies and other activities and peer support groups and things that all students were getting exposed to. But this was, we're going to select a certain group of students that maybe need a little more.
How does that happen in the schools? How do the kids sign up for the program? Is that how they?
Not typically.
Okay.
Typically, what we'll do is ask the school to ask teachers and staff for input. So we're looking for a group of 25 students. Who do you recommend? So if you were the way I did it, I had 6 teams of teachers. And I would ask each team to nominate, 5 students. One that was in the proven leader, one that was a potential leader, and 3 of the emerging leaders, right? 3 that are in the middle, kind of under the radar, maybe need a boost in confidence. And then I would get all those names from my teams, and then working with my counselor, we would kind of whittle that down to who we thought was going to be a good cross section. I was looking for some boys, some girls, some 7th grade, some 8th grade, some proven leaders, some emerging leaders, some potential leaders. I wanted that nice mix.
Yeah.
What we didn't ever want is to have the feeling, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, you don't want to be where you're like, oh, I'm thinking this is the class for the at-risk people.
Yep.
Or this is the class for those that can't really do math. And we also didn't want, oh, this is the class only for those,
high achievers.
Perfect for, this is, you've earned it into the advanced class, We wanted it to intentionally be, this is everyone. This is everyone.
I love how you mix it in, and it's, you get a little bit of those 3 groups. And, again, not that everybody needs it, but a lot of times those people in that middle group that are the quiet ones and flying under the radar, to your point, they're not being noticed, positive or negative. And sometimes they need that attention. They need somebody to put their arm around them.
I want to tell you, I have never once had one student complete the class and say, I wish I hadn't done it. Never once.
Yeah.
I've had anything else I've tried to do at the school. I've had people tell me that it wasn't worth it or it wasn't good or I don't know. I never once have had a student go through the whole experience here and say, I just wish I hadn't done it. That doesn't mean that everyone's getting equal amount of impact, but that's the truth. I've never heard that from anyone.
Steve, this has been such an awesome conversation. We could keep going. We could talk about this all day. I really appreciate you coming down and sharing this, and I'm excited to get it out there and put you on that pedestal.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I want to say again, love the way you're just spreading positivity through your Coffee and Grit podcast, and I really do feel honored that you asked me to come and have this conversation.
My pleasure. You're a difference maker to that point. Andrew usually sets me up when, I don't even know if he meant to set me up with the people that I wanted on my podcast. He'd just set me up with people and we'd be talking and all of a sudden I'm like, listen, you got to come on. And every person he's connected me with, I'm like, he knows the type of person I'm looking for. So he goes out and finds those people. So it's so cool. But, Man, this has been an absolute pleasure for me.
Thank you.
A pleasure.